Yeah, it was good.
So you know, having a good time.
Yeah, you never know. You
West
never
side
know
of
what
the
kind
state,
of crowd you walk
that's the
into.
only
I feel
way.
like maybe
I'm just one long swim from
that it was
Wisconsin.
more open, accepting. So,
Yeah, but when I was like, it's a summer, it's not.
yeah, right. Yeah. It's not a gun show or.
Yeah.
Everybody ready?
Not yet.
Okay, give me a minute, no problem.
I just hope he survives it.
We're good, John.
Go on.
Okay.
I was just wondering how he's going to. I saw him, he was coming out of the truck. I'll do when I goes. Yeah. Oof. I guess that's the thing I missed the most about working here. Those special events. Yeah. Oh, so much potential with that. Okay. Yep, so you stay on.
Yeah, we're ready.
Yep.
Come on, gather around. Let me fill right in down here. Okay, with me today, so everybody knows who's up here, I have State Senator Kristen McDonald Rivet here. I have Captain Greg Marenko from the 3rd District headquarters of the Michigan State Police overseeing the Flint post. I have Flint City Deputy Police Chief Jeff Antcliffe right here. I have Detective Sergeant Victoria Ross of the Flint PD Major Case Unit. Raise your hand, Victoria. I have Detective Trooper Frank Bailey, MSP Major Case Unit. Frank, and I have Lieutenant Kim Vetter, MSP. And it was Detective Ross and Detective Bailey who worked this case that resulted in what we're going to talk about here today. So everybody ready? All right. So my office has charged Michael Tolbert of Flint with multiple counts related to the shooting of a child. Let me read you the counts first so you have them. We've charged him with first-degree child abuse, which is a felony punishable by up to life in prison. We've charged him with felony firearm related to the child abuse count. We've charged him with a violation of the Michigan Safe Storage of Firearms law, which is a new law, which we'll talk about shortly. We've charged him with a felony firearm count related to that violation. We've also charged him with being a felon in possession of a firearm, a felon in possession of ammunition, and lying to a police officer about a violent crime investigation. And each one of those counts, except the last one, has a felony firearm count attached to it. We've also given a 4th offender habitual notice. Background of this is as follows. On February 14th, the Flint Police Department was dispatched to Hurley Medical Center in reference to a shooting victim arriving by a personal vehicle. Upon the officer's arrival, the victim, a 28-month-old girl, had a gunshot wound to her head. Patrol officers made contact with the little girl's father, identified as Michael Tolbert, date of birth April 7th of 1979. He transported her to the hospital. A search warrant was then executed at the venue of this incident, 6010 Clover Lawn Drive in Flint. During the search, blood was observed on the floor of the living room, as well as blood on the couch near the front entry door. The blood appeared to be coming from the front bedroom of the home. Upon entering the bedroom, investigators observed blood and brain matter on the floor. The blood in the bedroom floor was directly next to a small toddler-sized folding chair. There were 2 firearms located on the bed in this front bedroom. One firearm was a revolver, the other was a semi-automatic pistol. Upon examining the firearms, both were unsecured and loaded with live ammunition. The semi-automatic pistol had a live round in the chamber, as well as multiple live rounds in the magazine. The revolver had 1 fired casing and additional live ammunition inside of it. There were no gun locks or safes inside of this front bedroom. Upon examining the ceiling of the front bedroom, investigators observed a single bullet hole in the drywall ceiling. Per Hurley Medical staff, the bullet entered the right eye of the little girl and exited through the rear of her skull. Doctors have said that she will lose her right eye at best, and she remains in critical condition this afternoon. I want to thank the Michigan State Police and the City of Flint Police Department for their thorough investigation of this. I also want to make note that this is the first case in Michigan where an individual has been charged with violating the firearm safe storage law. The law, which was sponsored by Senator McDonald-Rivet, who will speak shortly, went into effect 1 week ago today. This incident occurred the very next day. Why this is so important is we've charged child abuse in the first degree, which is a life felony. In order to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, we have to prove as prosecutors that the defendant did knowingly or intentionally cause the serious physical harm to the child. And proving something happened knowingly and intentionally is a steep hill for a prosecutor in 2024. Thanks to this law, this is what we have to prove as to Mr. Tolbert's conduct, that he did store or leave a firearm unintended on premises under his or her control when he knew or reasonably should have known that a minor was or was likely to be present on the premises, and did fail to store the firearm in a locked box or container, and or keep the firearm unloaded and lock the firearm with a locking device that is properly engaged to render the firearm inoperable by any individual other than the owner or an authorized user. And that as a result, a minor obtained the firearm, discharged it, and inflicted serious impairment of a body function upon the minor. That is a much more straightforward situation than the child abuse charge. So I'd like to ask Senator McDonald-Rivet for her comments at this point, and I'd like to thank her for sponsoring this legislation that allows us to at least seek justice for the little girl. Senator?
Thank you, Prosecutor Leyton. We have reached a place in this country that the number one cause of death of children is gun violence, not car accidents, not cancer, gun violence. I have to say that when I introduced this legislation, it was my hope that it would never be used. Right now in the United States, we average one unintentional shooting of a child every day. Now that we have this in place, it was our goal to be able to give prosecutors tools, because with this right comes an extraordinary responsibility. And when you don't honor that responsibility, there need to be criminal penalties. I did not ever dream that within days of the law going into effect, we would need it. But here we are. So I'm hopeful that these prosecutions and that as we raise awareness in the public about the importance of safe storage, that we will need to use this less and less. But right now, I am glad that we were able to put a tool in prosecutors' hands. Thank you.
Captain Greg Marenko runs the region for Michigan State Police, and he's presently overseeing the Flint Post. So, Captain, I want to thank you and your folks for an excellent investigation, please.
Thank you, Prosecutor Leyton. Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, we continue to hold this injured child and her family in our thoughts and prayers. The Michigan State Police remain committed to creating and maintaining safe environments for all of our citizens. It saddens us to speak about the tragic incident, which was a completely preventable one, that left an innocent child gravely injured. Please do your part to ensure that guns in your home are secured and stored properly. We don't want this tragedy to happen to another family. Gun locks are available for free at the Flint Post down the road from here. As a gun owner, you're responsible for the use and storage of your firearm. Please know that it only takes a moment for an incident like this to happen. So, thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Questions?
Prosecutor Leyton, when was this suspect arrested?
They went to the scene and they were able to find this gentleman, first of all, at the Hurley Medical Center. And then there was some discussion between him and the investigators, and he ended up back at the Flint Police Department.
Why did it take so long for charges to be announced?
Actually, it didn't. We charged this over the weekend. He's already been arraigned. What took longer was for me to pull together this news conference. And I wanted to do it because of the new law and that it went into effect, and that this is the first case in the state where we're actually using the law. And as the senator said, I didn't expect it to happen so fast, but sadly it did. And, I'm glad the law's on the books. I'm sad that the incident occurred.
Could you confirm the spelling of the defendant's last name?
Sure. Tolbert.
Is there anyone else that you're looking at in this investigation who might face possible charges?
Not at this time, but as you know, all investigations remain open. If additional information comes in, we take a look at it, determine if there's probable cause that a crime was committed, and then we might add charges. But at this particular time, the answer is no. James.
There is a GoFundMe for this little girl. Well, apparently, can you name here? Can you give us her name?
Well, I know it's already out there. I normally don't do that, but since it's already out there, I certainly think I can do that. Her name is Skye McBride. Skye is Skye, McBride, McBride. Her date of birth is 10/15/21.
And that's why I was following up with that question. The GoFundMe listed her at 3, but you obviously gave us the birth date there, so we can do the math for ourselves. So.
You can check my math too.
Yeah.
Were there other children in the home when this happened? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. Anybody else?
And
Yeah.
could you just talk a little bit about, do you think that the new storage law gives you as a prosecutor a new avenue to file charges in addition to charges under the storage law, given that it sort of creates this new legal duty for adults?
Yeah, I mean, that's why this is such an important law, because as I mentioned, it's not easy to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt these days. And in the child abuse case, we have to show knowingly did something. Here, we just have actual specific elements that we can show. Had a gun, didn't store it properly, child was in the home, he was in charge of the child got her hands on the gun, and something bad happened. So yes, it's a very useful tool for prosecutors.
And you said it was the revolver that was actually fired?
That's our understanding.
And with safe storage law, that's 20, if this, God forbid, this child dies, that's 20-year felony, or is that more severe?
You know, it goes up and the penalty were 15-year, I think.
Okay, that's right. Thank you.
And then we would also, God forbid that happens, but we would also be in a position where we would probably add a count of involuntary manslaughter, which is also a 15-year penalty.
Can you say at this stage what specific sentence you're seeking?
Sentencing is the purview of the judge. I would tell you that at this point in time, we have a maximum penalty of life in prison. There are sentencing guidelines in Michigan. Judges apply those guidelines, although they're not mandatory, they are advisory. And I really haven't looked at the guidelines yet in this particular case. But I usually leave the sentencings up to the judge. We're not there yet. This is just as a reminder. This man is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And that's my obligation to bring the case before the court to prove it at the appropriate time.
He's facing a charge of lying to a peace officer there. Can you tell us any circumstances surrounding the lying part of this?
I'm going to have to ask you to come to the preliminary examination for that, because under the Michigan rules of professional conduct that govern prosecutors, we can't talk about statements that the defendant may or may not have made. But you can glean from the fact that we've charged him that something did happen here.
Are gun locks available at Michigan State Police Post as well as Flint PD?
Can you talk a little more about that?
I'm sorry?
Are gun locks available for people to walk into the police department and say, I need a gun lock?
I believe so.
There are free gun locks available at all state police posts throughout the state. If they are out at the time, there are more on order, and we will make them available to anybody that requests them.
I just got one question for Senator McDonald Rivet, too, if you wouldn't mind heading up there. What was your reaction, or how did you feel, dumb question sometimes, but how did you feel, like you said, days after this law being passed, that this law ease yourself in this situation right now?
Devastated. You know, most folks know I have 6 of my own kids. Anytime a child is harmed, it's a tragedy. And honestly, I worry about a day that we don't feel devastated when this happens. When we become numb to it, we have a really big issue. But, you know, I introduced this bill because we have to do something. We have to start stemming this tide of what gun violence is doing to our kids. But it's always the hope that we don't have to rely on them. And the idea that we are using it, that Prosecutor Leyton is using this within days of its effective date, tells you that we have a real problem and we really need to work together to fix it.
Any other questions?
I am brand new to Michigan, so could you just
Welcome.
Thank you. Could you just clarify for me, what is a felony firearm that comes along with the charges? Is that like a sentence enhancer?
It's yeah, sort of. It's a separate felony crime, which says that the person who committed the felony possessed a firearm during the commission of the felony. It's punishable by 2 years that are mandatory and consecutive to any other sentence the judge gives for the other counts that are charged. Does that help?
It does.
Was there any bond issued in this case?
I know he was arraigned. Do we know what his, anybody know what his bond was? probably can check on the county computer. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate you covering this. $250, 10%. So that's the total.
Well, you know.
She's right. She did.